Hello and welcome to the Bacon Bites, episode 2. On this episode, what we're going to look at is Summit. And we're going to talk about the Dynamics communities, which is the big user base and user group for Dynamics communities. What they do is they focus on and they have a national conference every year. And it rotates. It's been in Tampa, it's been in Seattle, it's been in Reno, it's been in Nashville. This past year it was in Phoenix. And so I had the opportunity to go down there with a couple of friends and ask them to be a part of this podcast. And so I'll go ahead and have them introduce themselves. And so we'll start with David.
Yep. My name is Dave Bacon. I've been in the CRM space for a little over 2 years now. Came in more as a developer. Hadn't really thought about working on this type of platform, but got the opportunity and have really enjoyed working with Microsoft Dynamics CE now.
Great. Thanks, Dave. Casey.
Hey, everybody. My name is Casey Dang. I joined the CRM platform about a year and a half ago, and I was a college hire, so wasn't ever really exposed to customer engagement software. So it's been a really fun journey to learn how people can leverage this and to also see how, as a consultant, I can help build this platform to be useful for other people.
Great. No, I appreciate you both being on here, and I know it's great having two people that in the essentially last 2 years, are starting out their journey. And I think that was one of the goals with the Bacon Bites is helping individuals that are on that journey early on their path and their learning. And it's great to have both of you on here, and it's great to have a developer as well as a functional consultant such as yourself, Case. Great. So what I want to do is I'm going to describe the conference a little, and then we'll get into sort of your individual experiences and how you guys thought things went. And so like I mentioned before, the summit is what Dynamics community calls their large event. Dynamics community puts on a bunch of different chapter events, and so those are typically local in the cities, and each city will essentially come together at this national summit. And at the national summit, they'll do academies for a couple days, and those are typically 4 to 8 hours, sometimes 2-day classes that are in person, that are on site. And people are able to attend those and be able to get some of the deep dive sessions that they typically aren't able to get, maybe whether it's virtual or whether it's in person. So it's a great time to come have an in-person training right before the sessions. And then we essentially have 3 days of sessions, which is 3 or 4 days. I think it was 4 days this year. And so it's just a lot of intense training, and it's a great time for whether it's end users or administrators of the system to come together along with partners and ISVs to come in and really start to collaborate. And it's one of the best conferences I've been to because you get such a wide variety. And it's great because other Dynamics products besides sort of the CRM and customer engagement, there's Dynamics Finance and Operations, formerly known as AX. There's Dynamics GP, Dynamics SL, and now they're bringing in the Power Platform, which is really neat to see. And they have these different power groups. And so at one conference, you can attend whether it's the ERP side or whether it's the customer engagement side or whether it's the new Power BI and Flow and stuff like that. And so it's one of the most fun that I've had at a conference. And again, it's a great opportunity to collaborate with people and ask those hard questions. There's often MVPs walking around talking about and answering people's questions, and they have the concept of a medic center where you can come in and get help with your problems. So that's a fairly high overview of what it is, and it's a great opportunity for any of those that are able to go. And so what I wanted to do is just kind of talk about it here in this format and see how, as first timers to Summit, and what did you learn and what was sort of the takeaways there? So David, that first experience coming into Summit.
So before this, I hadn't really been to conferences, some internal ones for the company I work for, RSM. But this one just sort of surprised me how big it was. So I was impressed how many people want to take the time to further their skills within the different Microsoft products. And so that was really cool to see. And just it was really neat to be able to see the engagement between the different groups, but then also within the CRM space. people really wanting to see other people succeed and show from their personal experiences what they've done, what they've learned, the mistakes they made, and try and help other people avoid those. So overall, I was just really excited to be there, and I hope I be able to keep going year after year.
No, it's awesome. Yeah, it is. It's. I think that first time you don't realize how big it is, and so they took up the whole Phoenix Convention Center, and so multiple levels and multiple buildings, and when you have 8,000 people come into a conference, it changes the city. So it was funny. We were out at dinner one night, and the waitress was like, "How long are you guys here?" Because we want to make sure we're staffed up for all you guys, and so that was kind of fun. It really does make an impact on the city, and so that's really neat. Casey, how about yourself? How was sort of your first conference at Summit?
Similar to David, I hadn't really had the chance to attend an external conference before, so it was a great experience. I loved the opportunity to kind of just network and meet other people. And I think the thing that struck me the most was, there's 7,000, 8,000 people, but we're all there for the same reason. And if when I just sat down and thought about that, it was really special because people are, we're all working together to kind of overcome some of the struggles, but also share best practices and see where Dynamics is going in the future. So it was really valuable to kind of soak that in and not do it in a silo. And I think the best part about Summit was just being able to be around all those people and recognizing, we're not alone in this.
Yeah, and I think that's as with any community, when you think about it, it really is a group of people. And I think so often users, and I know when I was an administrator, you feel like you're doing it by yourself. And so you got yourself and maybe one other person in the organization, or maybe your partner, and you feel very siloed. I mean, it's lonesome a lot of times being the person. And so I think it's great that you're able to see that and help connect with people. And I know there was a number of people that you were able to connect with around that. So, Casey, I'm going to go back to you. I think you presented this year. Was that? What was sort of the process to present, and then what was sort of the experience there around presenting, and what was the outcome?
Yeah, so I believe Dynamics Communities allows everybody to submit their presentations 6 to 8 months in advance, so quite a while in advance. And that was awesome because I kind of had the opportunity to think about what type of presentation I wanted to do, what types of things I would be comfortable presenting to a larger group, and also have the time to practice that presentation and make sure it was polished by the time I got to Summit. Um, and in terms of submitting the presentation, it's really, kind of coming up with that title that's going to pull people in, something that people can relate to, or it's kind of your gotcha to get people into the room. So I think that if you're looking to present at Summit, having a really good title is something that will help you get people in the room. And outside of that, also just having good learning objectives that are relevant, focusing on things that people are interested in, and new and exciting topics, I think is also really helpful um, to presentations that you might be submitting. And in terms of speaking at the conference, um, that was super fun as well. Uh, I get a little bit nervous public speaking, but you kind of realize you're in a room of people who are all trying to learn from you too. And I had the opportunity to just be honest and upfront. I said I've only had a year and a half almost of experience, so there might be other people that have more experience than me, but I feel like I still have a story to share, and there's value in that. And I thought it was really special. And people came up after the session and asked questions and were interested and engaged. So I really think that's the point of the summit. It's to connect people and to kind of share our stories and learn and grow from each other.
No, it's great, and it's great that I think it's great that somebody new to the product is able to give back and contribute. It's not something that you have to have 20 years experience with or 10 years of experience. I mean, within essentially 9 months of starting on the product, you were able to submit something to present on. And the feedback that I had heard around this kind of stuff is just the fact that everybody's learning, and it's such a large product that people don't know everything, and so they can learn from somebody, and so everybody knows more than I go to Summit. Everybody knows more about something than I do, and so I need to find out what that is and to learn from them as part of that. So that's great that you were able to present and do it in such a way. So David, Casey talks about sort of that title and that learning objective and stuff like that. How did you pick sessions as you were going through this? Did you look at those titles and be like, "That's the one"?
Yeah, so the titles were definitely important in sort of getting that first interest. There's definitely different areas I was interested in learning more about. I knew before I even went through the list of possible sessions to attend. So since I'm a developer, all the ones that were developer focused automatically had my attention to start off with. But there was a few others that the title brought me in, and reading sort of what they were trying to accomplish was like, yeah, I want to know more about that. Like they really sold me on on their session through it.
That's cool. So, what were some of the things that, as you were going into Summit, that you were interested in and wanted to learn more about?
So I do a lot of work with the Dynamics Microsoft Portal, the out of the box one, and so uh, anyone that related to that, I wanted to at least read through what they're trying to accomplish and see if it was something I think would increase my knowledge in that space. So those ones were high on my list. I also have interest in data analytics, and so Power BI sessions. I always was looking at what was going on with those ones. The ones that really got my attention were ones that are like Power BI, how to embed those into web pages and stuff. So it's like crossing two interests of mine. Um, I guess those would be the main ones that I was looking at. But then I was just really interested to see and hear from the different ISVs. So before the conference, I hadn't really looked through or pondered all the different ISVs that were out there, and going to the conference and going through the different booths at the expo, I was just surprised, honestly, how many different ISVs were being offered, and different partners and sponsors and such were there, and was impressed with several of the products that were being offered to go along with CRM.
Yeah. So, two follow up questions, kind of both to Casey. So, the first one being, did you have a game plan when you were looking at sessions? Like David did. David had a couple of things. Hey, this is what I want to learn, and sort of the go-to things. Did you approach it the same way, or did you have a different approach going in?
I had a similar approach. I definitely looked at the session titles beforehand and the learning objectives, but I also knew that there were a couple classes that I really wanted to take. So that in that I was similar to David. However, my interests were a little bit different. So I wanted to take classes that kind of talked about the future of Dynamics 365. And in that, I took a couple of flow classes, a couple of Power Apps classes, and then also a class on the CDM. And those were exciting for me because I'm always interested to see where the product's going, and I hope to leverage that knowledge. So that was exciting, and it's really helpful to be able to see those sessions beforehand. And actually, David did a really good job of kind of connecting with our internal team that was going to the summit to kind of have a divide and conquer strategy because there's just so many sessions going on at the same time. And, in a perfect world, you could go to all of them. Um, but being able to say, hey, I'll go to this session and you can go to another session, and we can connect back and share knowledge afterwards. So that was also a good strategy.
No, it's great. I've definitely heard the divide and conquer strategy when people are going. I've also, it's been fun. I've seen people meet each other at Summit, and they're like, "Okay, we should do that divide and conquer thing. I just met you, and then let's meet up for lunch, and then just sort of like debrief each other." And so that's really cool. The second question or the follow up question around that was, David mentioned just sort of the expo hall. How was it walking into the expo hall for the first time for y'all?
I was very impressed with how many partners and ISVs were there. And it was really fun to just walk around and just see what people do. There's so many uses that I hadn't even been aware of. So it was great to just learn. And I had kind of an interest data migration before this, just because of a project that we had been on. So it was very interesting to see that there's different solutions that could be used, and that sort of thing. So you can definitely come in with questions and kind of tailor where you wanted to go, because there's just so many vendors. But it was awesome. I think the expo hall was one of the best parts of the summit.
Very cool. How about for you, David?
Yeah,
How was the expo hall experience?
similar. So you walk in and it's just like, this is huge. There's so much to go see and people to talk to. Um, and so obviously similar with the sessions, I had different sort of areas and ISV services that I'm a little bit more interested in, since they might be able to help me in my development, or they might be migration. So like Casey mentioned, we have done a lot of data migration between old systems, or uh, just continued updates and so on and so forth. But then also different ISVs offer different types of portal applications. So the portal connector was one that I was really interested in. And the people working there, Ian and Ryan, really took the time to talk with me about their product. And really, I think I was probably there 30 minutes, 45 minutes the first night, just talking on portals with them, and what exactly their product allows you to do, and how easy it was to use, and so on. So it really gave me idea of how can I bring this to bear on a client. When's that point of, okay, we have this sort of Microsoft out of the box portal, I can develop that, but if this other product that's already out there and it's pretty refined and easy to set up, maybe bring in that ISV to the client instead of just using the out of box portal would add value to the client and help them get to where they're wanting to go to sooner. So that was just one example of many things that the expo hall uh, sort of had in store for us when we walked in the door.
No, that's cool, and I think that's a great sort of highlight. Is there's so many opportunities. I mean, there's kind of two different things, right? One is to build or to buy, right? And so, how do should we build this for the client, and should this be sort of that greenfield approach where we start sort of from nothing and then go for it, or is it better and wiser for the client as far as a cost or a maintenance expense? For them to actually go with an ISV, even though the out of the box Microsoft portals are free, there may be an opportunity and a better approach for somebody that's either on a different platform or a different website. Maybe it makes sense. So, no, that's great. So the other thing I wanted to touch on, and you kind of alluded to this, Casey, is those other power platforms. And you mentioned CDM, you mentioned, I think you mentioned Flow and Power Apps and stuff like that. How were those sessions? I wasn't able to attend
I
any of
thought they
those.
were awesome. One of the sessions, I can't remember what the name was now, but we actually got to build a button using Flow. So that was really cool to kind of be able to come away with a, a tangible product, and that was awesome. That was one of my favorite sessions. Uh,
So before you go on, so a button like the easy button, like a physical Staples easy button type of thing, or
yeah, it was an easy button that sent, like, we passed around the button and then it sent an email. It was Bluetooth enabled, I believe. I'll have to look up additional details on that, but that was pretty cool.
okay, it's cool. I mean, because then so it was something that interacted with the CDM, or was it interacted with the CRM system
With
or
the
the
Yeah,
CE
with
system?
the CE system and with Flow. So it was basically like a rating system. Yeah, basically like the easy button, where there was a green, a yellow, and a red button, and you could press those buttons, and they would send an email kind of showing what the ratings were. And we passed around the button, and we saw that emails came through to the end user. So
I think we keep talking about CDM. What
so
is CDM for those that
CDM
may
is
not know?
the common data model, and I really didn't know very much about it. So coming into the session and kind of learning about it was awesome. And I think it's really great that they kind of had beginner and entry level informational sessions. And what I basically learned was that it's kind of a platform for um, shared entities essentially, or tables where um, there can be information that's shared across multiple platforms. So, wherever your information is coming in and out of, you can share that data. So, for example, you might be using D365 for customer engagement, along with finance and ops, and you might have a contact record that you want to update, and you don't want to have to update it in both places. So it kind of makes it flow more easily, and just makes upkeep a little simpler as well. And I think another exciting thing on that front is that they're kind of building out industry verticals in terms of the CDM. So there's just it's going to be easier to access data. And I really think that's where the future of Dynamics is going, and it's exciting stuff.
Very cool. Yeah, and so when you talk about the future of Dynamics, I think James Phillips did a general session that everybody attended and stuff. And so, how was that sort of seeing him present? He's leading the business applications team. How was it to see that presentation and see where Dynamics is going from
It
Microsoft's
was
point of view?
awesome. They were First of all, I think that there was just great energy in the room. People get excited when you start talking about where this is headed, and I think some of the favorite things that I saw were that Power Platforms is going to be big, and also that uh, the I'm blanking on the name right now. The remote assist, um, where you can kind of have a visual person, um, hologram, basically helping on site. That was just really crazy to kind of see that um, play out, and I'm interested to see whether or not people will be able to implement that, because I'm sure it's quite an investment, but from the stories that we saw, it seems like there was a really high return on that investment. So that was cool to see.
No, very cool. Yeah, I think that with the HoloLens and stuff and that augmented reality, and it'll be interesting. One of the things I use cases when you talk about HoloLens and this augmented reality, I think of often like a farmer or somebody that's out in the field and that can't take his tractor in to get it serviced or something like that, or it would be very expensive for the individual to do that. And so if you had these like Caterpillar, John Deere, or these different companies like provide a HoloLens as part of the package. And so like, hey, you want our support package? Here's a HoloLens. And what we're going to do is we're going to have it be Wi-Fi enabled or whatever, and you can upload it and you can connect to us real time to our support team. And so they can see what you're seeing and be able to fix it in the field, as opposed to having to figure out how to get it down to the dealership or something like that. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But you're right. It could be very powerful, but is cost going to come into it and stuff like that. Um, the other thing, it's interesting seeing the story Microsoft tells, because what they were talking about was Polaris, and just that the story of a service tech that's out in the field and being able to service something and add additional enhancements and features. It'll be interesting. Also, everybody learns stuff on YouTube. So, is there going to be a day where people put stuff on a HoloLens, and so people are able to put that on and see how they can fix their car or their engine without having to do it real time, and the artificial intelligence and being able to identify what I'm looking at, and knowing that this plug right here is what I need to change without actually having to go to a virtual assistant. So that'll be another podcast. We can talk about that more later. But it's definitely something that's interesting, and how that all flows back into what you talked about, the common data model, and how do we track parts through that? How do we track the service ticket itself that we're working on, and how do we leverage all that as a business application? So I'll get off that soapbox and back to the summit. So David, tell me about the sort of the people you met. I know you went to some of these development sessions. You went to the expo hall. So how was the networking component of it?
Sure. There was a lot of different levels of people that work with the Dynamics CE. So it was interesting, just to talk with them and sort of see how their business uses Dynamics CE. And my personal experience has been a lot of the public sector, working with state and cities and so on. So I met a lot of people that were in the public sector, not in the public sector, in the private sector, and so just seeing them use sales for sales and marketing and stuff, and just the struggles they go through there. Um, Another interesting thing I found while there, and I think it sort of surprised me, was when I was talking with people, or a common question, I guess, in most of the sessions, as far as the developer side, was how many people are on premise and how many people are on the cloud. And usually 40 to 50% of people are still on premise, which surprised me a little bit, seeing how I guess in the past 2 years I've worked solely in a online environment with CRM and Microsoft. Um, and Microsoft's really pushing towards online, and so they don't support on premise. It's almost as wholeheartedly as they do online. So it was interesting to see sort of their concerns with they don't have sort of the ability to push upper management in their own companies to go towards online for financial reasons or for whatever reason. So you go to these development classes, and they would have concerns about, does this apply for us? Like, how can we um, use it? Uh, are we on a version that these things you talk about are useful, or are we on too old of a version to be able to um, apply this new ability or whatever it is? So it's just interesting to me talking with those individuals.
Yeah, when you talk to those people, because I think it's great, right? So you're getting exposed to things that you hadn't been exposed to before, and so there's concerns out there in the community about how does this get applied. And so for those people, did most of the stuff you see work for them, or is there limitations, sort of high level? I mean, like, is workflows work for everybody, or plugins, or like, sort of what was that sort of consensus when you went to the sessions? Was what they were seeing beneficial to them, even though they were on premise?
Yeah, so developer ones, there's several that were plugin focused and so on and so forth. Those ones, plugins work previous versions. So just sort of best practices, those were easy to implement and keep up with. Version didn't matter. Then also, another interesting one I went to was about doing user testing, so quality assurance and sort of streamlining that process. And so that didn't affect the whether or not the company was on a on-premise or in the cloud. It was applicable to both. And so the ones though that dealt with portals and such, I feel like those were uh, more focused on people in the cloud, and the people that were on premise still for those. They did offer things like Microsoft did a one-time release of AVX 7, I believe, and that in reference a community that I think a CRM MVP is a part of, and they actually keep that sort of have a community around just that individual portal release for on premise and do updates and such. Since that is no longer supported by Microsoft, so that was just really cool to see that even though they didn't have all the new tools or functionality, they can still connect with other people and using the portal software from Microsoft.
Yeah, that's very cool. It almost becomes, in a sense, open source in a way, because they've released the actual code itself, and then it's being maintained by people um, as a community, and so that's pretty cool. Um, I just one other thing on that on-premise thing. I think Microsoft, from what I've seen, is just sort of releasing on-premise once a year, as opposed to online, which they do on multiple times. And a lot of the new online features seem to leverage Azure or something else in the cloud, and people can't typically take advantage of that. A lot of times as well, you'll see financial institutions or somebody that maybe their organization or has regulations around it, so they can't go to a cloud-based system, and so they're having to stay on premise. And that's still, in some senses, a strong talking point for Microsoft to be able to still leverage this large enterprise level software and leverage it for people that are on premise or have requirements for on premise. I know in our user group here in Seattle, that's a requirement for one of the companies, and they're like, we enjoy Microsoft and it's good stuff, but at the same time, not feeling as much love. So, yeah, definitely something that comes up a lot. So, Casey, one of the questions I had for you is kind of the same thing as networking. As somebody that's new to Dynamics, somebody that's getting involved, I know you spoke there. What was sort of the networking experience for you and the ISVs and the expos and I think there was events in the evenings and stuff
Yeah,
like that you
so
can
there were
connect with people
lots
at?
of opportunities to be around people that you didn't know beforehand, and I think that was probably the best part. One thing that I tried to do every day was during the lunch sessions I would try to eat with somebody that I didn't know, or sit with a table full of strangers and just ask their stories and see where they had come from and what brought them to the conference. And that was definitely a highlight for me because we had about an hour, between an hour and 2 hours for lunch, so I really utilize that time to connect with people. Um, and I actually met somebody who I found out lives across the street from where I grew up. So it's funny, you go all the way to Phoenix to find somebody right from home. Yeah, so small world. But yeah, it was really fun connecting with people, not only that were using, customer engagement, but also people who are finance and operations or business central or GP users, and hearing their stories. And there were also events in the evenings that partners or ISVs hosted, and those were great networking events as well. Yeah, those were really fun, and I would definitely recommend going to those for any folks who will be at the summit next year.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. I think it speaks a lot when you can fellowship around food and connect over food, and then the evenings events as well. It always seemed like somebody was hosting something, and I agree. I think it's a great opportunity to, in some cases, let down your hair, even if you're bald, and then sort of connect with people and just uh, commiserate and get excited and kind of go through a bunch of different emotions at Summit, which is a lot of fun. So, David, one of the things as a developer, you're not on site at clients necessarily all the time. And so, how did you have to work that week? And was there expectations around that? And how did you manage that if you did have to work?
Yeah, so I went into the week knowing I had some work that needed to be taken care of during that week, and so I went to it, and during the whole beginning process before I got there, I'm like, all right, so I know I need to work. Let me try to figure out best time to do it. So I went into the sessions. If they didn't sell me well enough on any session during a time period, um, it would fall down the list. And eventually, if it got to the bottom of the list, I would probably just not go to any sessions during that time and work for an hour here or there. Also, I I knew it was going to be a long week, so I got up early most mornings and tried to get some work done before the first session, and then made sure I didn't stay out too late networking. So I was fresh and be able to focus on my work. But luckily, I live in the Phoenix area, so the summit was more convenient for sort of working. Um, so I was able to go home some of the nights and just wake up early, having good sleep in my bed, and just be able to like hammer out 3 hours of quality work before going to the sessions. I was exhausted by the end of the week, but I still enjoyed it all. Um,
Very
Another
nice.
thing I did notice
Yeah.
is a lot of people uh, were sort of in the same boat as I was. And so you'd walk between sessions and such, and you just see people on phone calls or with their laptops out, taking internal meeting calls with people back at the office type idea. That was something fairly consistent. I feel like people in the community respected that, and feel like it was a good environment for those that still had to get work done to be able to get work done.
Very nice. I think it's funny you come back to if the session didn't hook you, as far as the title goes or the objectives. It was kind of like, I need to get this work done. But your commute home was a lot better than I think a lot of people's flying out of out of the city, which is the pro there. So well, good. I think just sort of as we look to wrap up, I mean, what were some of the big takeaways, or what would you encourage people that are looking to do this and to make a pitch to their boss, or for people that are looking to get involved in communities? Maybe they're not involved in the local Dynamics communities chapter, their local CRM UG or D365 UG or Power Apps. And stuff like that. What would you what are your final takeaways as we kind of wrap up? And David, we'll start with you.
Sure. So, this is my first experience, obviously. I really enjoyed it. I want to go back. So, I actually was thinking if I wasn't a consultant and if I, for whatever reason, started being like an admin or something for a business, I probably would go into an interview being like, this is sort of critical. I want this be sort of my hiring, part of my hiring. Like, I go to this event annually. Like that's part of me being hired. I gotta go here. I gotta attend this event. It's really important to go. Just so you being part of the community, you really do learn a lot in all these different sessions. So yeah, and the second thing that I found like a big takeaway was I hadn't really been super involved with the local CRM user group, and so going to this event, sort of cold turkey with the whole user group experience, it made me really want to get involved with the local user group. So I've already been looking and finding people I can connect to here in Phoenix to hopefully just maybe monthly get together with some of them and just sort of talk shop, CRM. So those are probably big two takeaways for me.
Yeah, I think what I really took away from the conference was, everybody has good things to share, and you shouldn't feel devalued if you're new to the platform or don't know that much about Dynamics and the whole Microsoft stack. So I would encourage people to share their expertise and try to teach a session if you feel like you have something to share. And definitely encourage coworkers and other people that are Dynamics users to come as well, because it's all about the community. And this event wouldn't be possible without all the users. So that's definitely my major takeaway, and I'm already thinking about sessions for next year.
No, it's very cool. Yeah, I think it is a community, and I think that's the best part is people learning from other people, and everybody volunteers their time when it comes to the community and the presenters. It's people that are passionate about what they do and enjoy what they do, um, and most people enjoy it. A lot of people are, are frustrated, but at the same time, it's one of those things where it's an opportunity to help work those frustrations out and get those answers.
So another thing I thought was really cool about the CRM summit was I went in following maybe three people in the CRM space on Twitter, and then I walked away following probably 15 more. Got to listen to some people speak, and so I got like, oh wow, you guys are really smart around this stuff. I should totally follow you and see what else you have to say. And then others I just met, so I was able to just link up with them that way. And so I feel like I'm diving more into the user group from this experience. And so it's another thing that makes me excited about going back next year, hopefully, is just be able to reconnect with these individuals.
Oh, it's very cool. Yeah, it definitely becomes sort of a friendship after this is my third year of going. It's fun seeing people that you met the first year, and Casey was talking about meeting people at lunch, and so those people that you meet at lunch, all of a sudden you see them again 2 years later, and you're catching up on life, and it's like your old friends because maybe you saw each other's post or you follow each other on Twitter, and it's a cool community that gets built up around a business application, which um, it's interesting having a community around software, which is a lot of fun. So, Casey, I heard there was a special lunch that happened on Thursday. If you can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it was the Woman in Technology luncheon, and it was actually open to both men and women. And it was kind of a fireside chat sort of style with a panel with four women and a moderator, and basically just chatted about how Dynamics had kind of transformed their careers, what steps they had taken to kind of reach their success, and just it was an opportunity once again to learn from other people at the summit, and it was one of my favorite sessions, and I would definitely recommend it for folks who want to go next year. But yeah, I think it was just really cool also to kind of like you're sitting at a table, so you're connecting with the people that you're sitting with and kind of chatting with them before the session starts, and then you get the chance to hear from all these women. And afterwards, I went up and um, talked to them a little more, just because they were still there, and I thought it was really interesting and inspiring to hear their stories.
Very much appreciate both you all being on the podcast today and just taking the time, again, volunteering your time as part of the community, and just helping share sort of that first summit experience with the people here on the Bacon Bites. And so, David, if people wanted to get a hold of you or reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, the best way would actually be reach out to me via LinkedIn. You can just look up David Bacon and should be able to find me that way.
Yeah, LinkedIn is great for me as well. My LinkedIn name is Casey Dang with two S's. So you can definitely contact me there, and I'd love to chat.
Great. And I assume both you guys are on the Dynamics communities as well. And so if they wanted to look in the Dynamics communities or crmug.com, you can find you there.
Yeah, they should be able to find me there.
Yep, I'm definitely there too.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for being on the podcast today.
Thanks for having us.
Yep, thanks, Seth.